and our supervisor. So we're under GDG Montreal right now, and we're gonna have at least one event per month. So we're going to create our community here, especially for Flutter. And we have some ideas, some goals, and I hope we can do that because every country or every other cities around the world has many other Flutter community which are really big, like Flutter China, Flutter Spanish, Flutter in my country, Iran. We have so many big communities over there. So actually, why don't we have a community here? So that's the reason Jhin and I thought about that and think it's better to have a Flutter event here and by continuing like every month have at least one event is going to be a cool and like we can like have projects together or contribute to open source project like Flutter. That would be really amazing. We're going to have two speak in this event. The first one is about the Flutter and the introduction about Flutter and Dart. And the second one is about more specifically about the history of Flutter and how many features have been added to Flutter during like 3 years or 4 years. And then we're going to recap and closing the Flutter community and just have your suggestion about the community and everything. Also, this is our code of conduct, and if any problem has come up with you, you can ask any of the organizers here. A big thank to Unity for hosting us. This is the place that hosted by Unity. There is a restroom over there. You can use that. Yeah, that's it. For our community goals is like having a GDG Montreal Flutter that I mentioned. And also we want to have regular meetups and contributing to open source project. And if you come up every month and have any suggestion regarding like projects that we can make together or anything else, we can even create a GitHub repository and we have our own GitHub organization like Flutter China again. They have many cool packages that everyone uses in the world. So we can have those kind of ideas and project opportunity and hiring process during our events. So let's go to the first presentation. In this presentation, this is our first event, so I'm gonna like take a little step regarding the introduction about Flutter, and I'm not going furthermore like to talk about advanced feature or anything else. We're going to cover some basic introduction about Flutter and Dart. So our contact would be like Flutter and its advantages. Compared to other frameworks and other Android or native coding. Then we're going to talk about the Dart, the Flutter's language, programming language, and the architecture and the UI and widgets. And then talk about a little bit about declarative framework such as Flutter. You may already heard about the Flutter slogan. Build apps for any screen. By any screen, it literally means any screen, like from mobile, your desktop application, the web application, to embedded system, something like a Raspberry Pi, a refrigerator screen, someone did that, and car screen, like Toyota use Flutter for their production, in their production cars and everything. And they use Flutter for their embedded system, like the screen in the car. So they are using that. All of this screen, they come with one code base. That's the advantage of Flutter. So you don't need to write multiple code in like Android, iOS, or desktop, like everyone does. You can actually have one code base and like make it adaptive or something to any screen, because Flutter knows your width and height of your screen, and you can like make it adaptive screen for your application, so it can actually responsive to your application size. For example, if someone changed the web application browser width and height, and they will actually be compatible with the dimensions. Flutter is so fast. Why Flutter is fast? Is like Flutter code compiles to ARM and Intel machine code. And recently they added Mac Silicon processors. So it converts your application to the pixels. They don't convert your application to the Android or iOS, which actually React Native does. React Native actually convert your application to the Android by bridge. So Flutter doesn't do that. Flutter has its own engine and embedder system, so they can like convert your application to the pixels. So it's pretty much fast. And for the web part, they have a converter to the JavaScript. So it's not actually the same as the other platform. We're going to cover about the web part. It's productive. Flutter uses Dart's runtime in its engine. Dart's runtime is actually built in the Flutter engine and can like run your application in the development mode or debug mode in the Dart runtime. What's the advantage here? Is like Dart runtime converts your application, compile your application in GIT. It's called GIT. It's just in time, and it uses your changes, new changes. For example, I want to change the color of the application or a button to, for example, from red to orange or something. It knows your changes and apply those changes to your application in Dart's runtime. So you don't need to compile your application from the scratch. So it's gonna take a while or 2 minutes or something. So you need to just control a shortcut or something, and it's gonna apply your changes to your Dart's runtime application. So it's super much productive, because when I'm like coding Flutter, it's like I change something and I just press the Control S and it's gonna you have my changes in the application. It's pretty much instantly coding. And also we have hot reload. Hot reload is actually keeps the state of your application. For example, I'm in the page or something, it's not gonna run your application from the first page. But we have hot reload is pretty much like hot reset, but it's actually reset the state and you have your application from the first page. Flexible, you can control every pixel of your screen. You can customize any widgets, you can paint anything in your Flutter application, but actually you can use the pre-built widget design system like Material and Cupertino design system. And Cupertino for the iOS side and Material for everything else. But you can also use the Material design in your iOS code, but you don't need to do that. But if you want to have the same design in every platform, you can also use the Material everywhere. You don't have to use the Cupertino. We have DevTools in Flutter. DevTools is a set of useful tools for your development process. It actually has many features, like you can inspect your UI layout as a set of a Flutter app. What is this? I think this was the Flutter inspector, which was the first one tab. You can actually use this button to select your widget, and it will like direct you to your corresponding code, and it's really useful. I use that a lot because sometimes you don't have to like go through the whole of the code in one page or something. You can just click into something like in Flutter Inspector, and you will be direct to your corresponding code. It has other features like CPU monitoring, network, and memory, and source level debug. Whenever for example, I have a big text of someone's and it's not gonna fit in the screen, it's gonna give you an error. I don't know what it's called, but because the text is not fit in the screen. So it will direct you to the corresponding widget and tells you, dude, you have to fix this problem here. So it's really awesome because you don't need to find anything. It will tell you everything to code faster as much as possible. The cool feature, the important feature of this Flutter DevTools is the performance inspector. The performance inspector actually tells you how much effort did Flutter make to render your frame. For example, we have so much a slow frame here because the code design was not actually good. For example, if you use many heavy thing like set aside or anything else, it's gonna take a while for Flutter to render your application for that frame. So you can open this inspector and see which, for example, if I'm saying at the same page, which widget is gonna take a while to be rendered. So I can fix the problem here, not in the production whenever someone make an issue that your application doesn't work. The last but not least, the Flutter documentation is pretty much awesome because Flutter documentation has everything you need. It has tutorial, it has videos made by Flutter team, it has website documentation, and the cool thing I'm gonna show that in next slide is that there is a sample usage of the class inside of the Flutter website. I'm gonna show you later. But also there is a huge community in social media. You can also ask anyone from there and they will instantly reply you in Discord, in Slack, everything. This is a really cool stuff about the documentation. Here, if you see, for example, I go check the fractional translation class. First of all, you see many documentation here. And also Flutter plugin this is the Android Studio. You can, it will offer you some link of the classes, like you can click on the fractional box here and it will direct you to the web page. For example, this one, and in the web page you will see there's a box of Flutter sample code that Flutter team made for you, and you can stay here, don't leave anywhere, and I don't know, test or play with this code, with this sample, and like change something, and you can click on the run button, and you can test it. And you don't need to go anywhere to compile a sample code or something. So this is so much useful. I mean, you can use it in the web page. And also, I want to mention Flutter is open source. Actually, everything is documented and is public. Like, I remember one time Flutter made an investigation regarding research, UX research about the navigation. And I contributed to that repository. They wanted to know the idea about the navigation, about Flutter. They made a repository for that. So nothing is private, everything is public. You can contribute in each part of Flutter and see how it grew or something. Flutter is one of the fast-growing repository of GitHub, as you can see the graph stars. These are the advantages. There are many other advantages. We're not going to cover everything, but these are the main advantages of Flutter, using Flutter. And next one is the Dart. Dart is the Flutter's programming language. There are many reasons that Flutter team use Dart, not, for example, using Go or Python or something. There is many reasons for that, but the main reason is like Flutter team and the Dart team collaborate together to make many new features for Flutter from the Dart side, or Flutter for the Dart side, or Dart from the Dart for the Flutter side, and they collaborate together and they have the same developers, and that's really one of the main reasons that they use Dart. And also Dart is type safe and null safely language. So what does that mean? Null safely is recently announced, is the feature that calls you everything cannot be null unless you say so. So Flutter can tell you, before going to the runtime, it tells you how many exceptions you can get from this variable if this is not null. So this is the good feature because it helps you to prevent those kind of issues that may occur in the runtime, and we can prevent that and have a safe application from the nullable issues. Dart's compiler technology lets you run your code in different sphere. For example, here we have Dart native for the mobile and the desktop application, and we have the Dart web for the only web. Web also is the exception for every other concept that we are going to cover. So the web part also has its own compiler, and the Dart native has its own compiler other than the web. We have two modes of compiler. First of all, like what I mentioned earlier, is a Dart VM, which is helpful for hot reload and hot restart. Flutter Dart compile your application in GIT, which means just in time. You are able to use the hot restart and hot reload in your code. And whenever you're done with your application, you can actually use the AOT mode compiler to produce a machine code application, to package your application to the APK or something to build your application for the production. For the web platform, they use the same compiler because it's not really, they don't really can control everything in the web part because you have to deal with the browsers. So we're going to cover about the web part later. But Dart actually converts your application to the ARM and the Intel-based or Mac Silicon processors for the native part. We have also Flutter architectural. Flutter architecture is a layer-based architecture, and you can change every layer by your own. Someone did that. I don't suggest you to do that. For example, we have embedder, we have engine and framework. Someone changed the layer of the embedder to the Go language. So it was really, a good thing to do, but you don't have to do that. Actually, the developers only work with these first two layers, like the widgets and the material and Cupertino libraries. We have embedder in the lowest level, and the embedder the embedder provides an entry point to call the system function and use the system function. For example, navigation bar in the Android, or the notification bar, or any others like text input, mouse or keyboard input, or everything that's which related to the OS. Each embedder has its own programming language because they are separated to each other. For example, we have Java and CPP for Android, and Objective-C for iOS and Mac. We have CPP for Windows and Linux. Also, we have the exception for web. I'm going to talk about later. Yeah, that's pretty much for embedder. The Flutter engine doesn't need to know how to work with the the API for the OS side. So embedder does that. We have our engine from Flutter. Engine is a portable runtime for hosting application. What does it cover? It covers the core libraries. For example, the animation and graphics like Skia. Flutter uses Skia, a 2D graphical engine for Flutter. Is a Google product that uses Skia for rendering the graphical content in the application. Or file and network I/O and plugin architecture. Dart runtime, which I mentioned earlier, the Dart runtime, which you actually develop your code in Dart runtime. And the engine is responsible to actually convert your application to the pixel. That's what engine does. So it's not in the framework or anything. So if we're going further for the foundation and painting, which is going to be our next slide, the engine works with these two libraries and it provides some APIs to be called in the framework, and they will convert your application to the pixel. We have for web part also, again, there is another exception here. The web part is not actually, we can do a lot of things in the web because you have to work with the browsers. Flutter provides a reimplementation of the engine on top of the standard browser API. There is a browser and you have to call those browser API in JavaScript. Flutter rendering there are two options for the rendering your web application. The first one is HTML. Flutter converts to the HTML and CSS and using Canvas. It is actually has the small application size for your web because you have you have the HTML and CSS, the JavaScript for your code. It is I think it's like 5,000 or 10,000 line of code which is you can use that will be built for your web part. It's really pretty huge because for the web application is something like 3 megabytes or 5 megabytes of the code. So this is take some time to launch your application on web. So this is the kind of issue, but in the HTML part is much less upsized because they don't use the graphical like Skia. For the WebGL option, we have Flutter use a version of Skia compiled to WebAssembly called CanvasKit. It's you don't need to use this one because, for example, if you have some kind of graphical application, you have many images or something, you want to render it so fast, you need to do that, and it's gonna make your application bigger. These are the Flutter for architecture for the web part. Also, there is one question Flutter is pretty small, the framework, engine, and everything together, but we need those kind of packages that we want to use, for example, for the Bluetooth or camera or any other services which offers some kind of connectivity with with the application, some interaction with the user and the application. So those kind of things come with the packages. Packages is the solution for the Flutter to use the Android and iOS side. You can write your packages by the platform channel. Platform channel is used in the mobile side. This is the graphic for the platform channel. You have the Flutter framework. You have the method channel. You can create a channel. This is kind of for the developers who create a package, for example, for the camera or Bluetooth or any other usage. And you can create a channel and communicate with the Android side or iOS side, which you have your own Android code, which in Kotlin or Java, or iOS in Swift or Objective-C. And what Flutter actually does is like convert the data to the serialized data, or whenever it reaches the custom Android side, it will deserialize the data. And for example, the serialized is gonna be a map in the Dart side, and it will convert to the hash map to the custom Android side, and it will convert to dictionary to the iOS side. So you need to just only communicate with some data that you can actually send. Also, Flutter announced some new libraries called FFI. FFI is pretty new to communicate with the desktop application or any other mobile, but for the mobile part, mostly they use platform channel. FFI is for whenever you want to write the application in C for the desktop side, write the packages for the C-based side APIs for the desktop. We also have JS package that you can actually use the browsers. You don't need to, for example, if you have a web application you want to access to camera, you don't need to call the Android service. You need to call the browsers to access the camera or the file. So there are some APIs for that. You only need to call the JavaScript packages to call those kind of APIs. And in top level, we have framework that we actually use. Most of the developers use the framework. And also we have foundation, which covers most of the lowest level and core libraries for the Flutter. And it builds this provides a utility for the building block and the animation and the painting and the gesture. So this kind of layers is only need to be called through the next layer, which is the engine. So these libraries work with the engine and paints your application to the pixels. We also have rendering library, which provides an abstraction to dealing with the layout. And yeah, in top we have widget and the material and Cupertino, which the libraries that you use for the Flutter application to build your UI. So those kind of widgets and those kind of library is actually most of the time you use, but you can also use the rendering to alter your application based on what you want. There are also many packages like animation packages or anything that you can use. They actually alter those kind of layers to make cooler stuff with the Flutter, like animation and other stuff. So you don't need to do that. You can use those packages. You have your own function that you want. In Flutter, everything is widgets. What is widget? Widgets are the building block of your application. Even the page is the widget, and widgets are composed together to build the building block of your application and UI. So each widget has its own small purpose building block of your application. For example, we have a text widget, we have image widget, and also you can put them together to build your page. This is kind of the definition of the widget. You need to actually override the build method, which is which is one of the function of your stateful and stateless widget. A stateful and a stateless widget, we are not going to talk about those stuff right now because it's a state management talk. And they have one build function that you can override this function and just return your widgets in the build method. So you can have your own widgets, and these widgets are built in a tree of the widget. Next one, we're going to cover that. Flutter implements of their own UI. So Flutter doesn't use for example, switch box. Here we have a Cupertino switch, which is a widget. Flutter doesn't use the OS widgets. So, but React Native and every other use their OS implementation of UI. This is not good because Flutter can't control on every pixel of the screen. It has to communicate with the OS to get, for example, this kind of stuff from the OS. So Flutter doesn't do that. Flutter paints this kind of stuff on its own. And this is kind of have some benefits like extensibility, like every developers can have their own kind of Cupertino switch or Android switch, which is material. And avoid a significant performance bottleneck because Flutter needs to communicate with the OS, and the OS, this kind of communication has a heavy sub-functionality. So it avoids a significant performance. So at last, we have decoupled the application behavior. For example, if we want to have the same Cupertino switch in Android or iOS or even the desktop, we are free to use our own design system. We don't need to have the OS side design system. Whenever we want to switch, we can use the material switch or the Cupertino switch. We don't need to use the OS switch. We have the widget tree. Widgets we talked about before is a kind of get together and build a tree of the widgets for your application. Widget hierarchy based on composition. Each widget nests from its parent and receive context from the parent, and the structure carries up way to the material app or the my application here. For example, here we have 3 page. We don't want to talk about the setting here. We just have 3 page, and the root of your widget is the my application. And in the rest of the children, we have the my login screen, we have the catalog and the cards. And in the second one, we have the my app bar, the app bar here, and some list of items. It is actually the schema of your application, which is a tree of the widgets. So every time you, for example, change everything in your children, or you want to change the other, for example, the cart page, you need to call the parent to, for example, I want to add this item to the cart. So they are not related to each other. They can't really communicate to each other. Parents needs to tell that this, my children needs to rebuild, so I need to rebuild. So Flutter doesn't render everything at the same time. This is not, this is not a good idea. So Flutter has its own setting management, and whenever you want to, for example, add something to your cart, you need to call the parent or the parent of your parent to, for example, I want to add this item to my cart. Flutter has its own setting management, and you can use that to add your item to your cart. But we're not going to talk about the set management right now. Thinking declarative is kind of the Flutter side of programming UI. We have imperative side and declarative side. Imperative is something like Android and iOS way of programming UI side. For example, we have two view of, we want to change this view to the second one. Here we have the yellow color. We want to change it to the red color here, and also we want to delete these children and have our new one children in the view B. In the imperative side, we need to imperatively do the stuff like set color to the red. First of all, you need to define the B as a find this widget by ID. B set color to the red, and then clear the children widget, and then put the new view C to that parent. So this is the imperative side, but in Flutter use the declarative side, which you need to put the current state to the widget. For example, view B has the color red, and the children is the view C. That's it. If you want to change, you want to be dynamically or something, you need to put the variable as a color or the view C children. So what actually is it? It's like you have to put your state as an input and get your UI from the build function. And this kind of changes has been made by the set state in the stateful widget. And there are other ways to change your state, which is like using the state management like bug or provider or inherited widget. So you can change everything with the really good mechanism and architecture. And you don't need to, for example, think about how I can transit the color to the red from yellow. So Flutter does that for you, and you don't need to worry about those kind of things. And the only resources is flutter.dev website. You can find everything in this website, and it has the best documentation I think ever. So you only need to go to the flutter.dev and find everything in this website, the tutorial and everything, and you can find and learn by one. And there's also a code lab of Google. You can use that to learn Flutter one by one. And that's it. Thanks for your attention. And if you have any question, just ask right now. Any question?
Flutter, can you use Flutter with Unity?
Yeah, you can. There are some. For example, if Flutter, in this slide we have the Flutter channel, platform channel. You can actually use this kind of structure to build the Android size in the Flutter, and you can also use your Flutter application in the Android. These are interchangeable, but I'm not sure about the Unity, how can we do that? But you can also run your application, for example, in a widget or something from the Android size in your Flutter application, and vice versa, like from your Android size to your Flutter application. Yes?
Two questions. So the first one is, thank you. So when you build an app, are you able to build bundles or just regular APKs? And the other question is, so you were saying that it runs on the Flutter virtual machine. and I know that an APK on an Android, it runs on the Android runtime. So that means that the Flutter virtual machine is running on top of the Android runtime.
Flutter runtime, Dart runtime. You mean?
No, I think you said a Flutter virtual machine, right?
Yeah, Flutter for the debug mode use the virtual machine because they want to actually use the productive for the Flutter, and the hot reload and hot restart functionality is only can be happen in the virtual machine. For the Android side, you need to compile and Gradle or anything before seeing your application. It takes time to compile the Gradle and stuff. So for the debug mode, you have the Dart VM machine, Dart runtime, and you use the compiler just in time, GIT, to actually save your changes to the Dart VM.
You said a debug. What do you mean by debug exactly?
Whenever you code the application, when you are writing the code, we have the debug mode, like whenever you run your application in the IDE or something, it's a debug mode. Whenever you build your application, it's going to build entirely in the another compiler, like AOT.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's so much faster than the debug mode. It's, for example, we have hazards, we have print, or anything that you don't need them in the production. Flutter ignores them, and they don't be added to your application code for the build application.
Okay. And are you able to build bundles and APKs?
Yeah, of course. You can use the bundle for the Google Play stores, and you can also build for each architecture, like x64 or x86. And most of the mobile supports x83, and you can use, because whenever you build your application in Flutter, it's a really huge APK. You can just use separate per ABI. We have the ABI for the X another architecture and the other architecture. But like 90% of the mobile application use the x86. So you can use the pretty small application size. But you also, most of you use the Google Play Store, so you need to only build your application in bundle mode.
By any chance, do you know how the performance compares between Flutter and native development?
The performance, the native one is the best performance because there is no interface or something. This is not, changeable or something. But there are many other advantages rather than native. But compared to React Native and Xamarin, Flutter is much better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is more theoretical. I'm wondering how, from your perspective, how much you think learning the system thinking of it, or the theory part, versus like the application where you're actually learning. Is it like depends on your personality? Is it always better to start with this and then go on the application side? What do you think?
I didn't get it with your applications.
Yeah, so understanding the structure of Flutter, right? How does it work? Like from theoretical point of view, how much is that part versus like actually writing the code? Because some people jump right away without getting into this part, right?
Okay.
So in general, like when it comes to tech and coding and learning programming, like how much you think, is it always better to start with this, or it depends on your personality? Well, how do you prefer to learn? Make sense?
Yeah. My personality is like jump to the project. Like there is no way to learn something as fast as possible, like in an actual project. So Flutter website, if you actually check the website, it has many code labs or some tutorials that you can actually, because Flutter has the, render in the web application. So you don't need to even install IDE, or you can just, for example, play with the code lab and everything. So Flutter offers you the code lab, everything you need to learn as fast as possible. So you don't need to go through every documentation. You will learn one by one. I also forget about many other documentation. There are many things you need to know about Flutter. Because Flutter is a cross-platform language, you need to know everything for the desktop side, website, or the mobile side. So you don't need to do that. You need to run your project, and whenever it comes to your application, you need to implement a feature which actually useful for the website. So you go to the website and read the documentation whenever you want.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll just address the elephant in the room. What's the biggest advantage of learning Flutter in comparison to React? Because that's the biggest comparison right now. Because with React.js, you already know JavaScript. It's just another framework on top of it. But for Flutter, you have to know Dart, and then going the extra mile, and then again with the job prospect and all. So given the current scenario, what's the biggest plus point against Flutter that you would say? Thank you.
Yeah, many advantages I mentioned, they are not covered by React Native. Only the React Native is the cross-platform language or framework, and also you can't use the React Native for embedded system. That's another disadvantage of React Native. But React Native is the bridge for converting your application to the Android side. This bridge is you can't really ignore this bridge. It's a burden for your application. It has a lot of process and everything. So the performance compared to Flutter is nothing. Flutter has the best performance because it's use the SKIA as your render graphical content, and you can actually use the Flutter to render your code to the pixel. So you don't need to convert anything or anything else. But compared to what you mentioned about the Dart and the JS, I prefer Dart. JS is not really good idea for some kind of things, but Dart is the similar syntax based like Java. You don't need to learn anything else. You need to even JS is actually like the same, but it has many other features like null safety and type safety. But the thing is, what I mentioned earlier, the Flutter and Dart team is the same. They collaborate together and work together to build a better application as the before. So this is really advantage because React Native doesn't collaborate with the JS team. So they can add feature based on the Flutter usage, and that's really cool stuff. But learning Dart is really nothing. You already knew how to write in Java, so you're good to go to write your application Dart. So it's not really a bad issue.
Hi, thank you for the demo. It's the first time I hear about these Flutters, and I presume it's just for the mobile application. I used to be working on a web application and in the Microsoft technology stack, so it's very interesting to me. I'm just wondering, so based on the introduction, how is Flutter the platform or Dart language, how to talk to the back end?
How to talk to backend?
Yeah.
We have packages to, first of all, the network and everything is handled in the engine of Flutter. There are packages like HTTP package, which is a package, for example, I mentioned that Flutter code is really small. Every other functionality and other features that you may use in your application, you need to import the packages to your application. One of the packages for your interaction between the application and the backend side is the HTTP application or even GraphQL application if you have a GraphQL APIs. For that, you need to only import the package and just call for example, this API with this kind of input and get your output from the backend side. And also we have Firebase, which is the serverless packages. You need to only import the Firebase packages. You can interact with your Firebase project without any server or anything. So there are many things to do with your backend side. So there is no problem for that.
Thank you. So since it's an HTTP request, it's meaning actually you can talk into any database.
Database, like database in the backend or
Yeah,
database
database in the backend.
Yeah, you can use your API. You need to have your own API to call the app, to call from application to your backend. If you don't have API, you can't really communicate. This is for every other developments. You need to have APIs to communicate with your backend.
Thanks. Regarding the tool, you mentioned that dev tool. What's the name?
DevTools, yes.
It's like on the Microsoft side, like a video code you can use for the Dart language, right? It is like intelligence. Those kind of function feature will be provided by this tool.
No, it's not for the IntelliJ side. You can you can code Flutter in VS Code, IntelliJ, Android Studio, everywhere you want. And Flutter team builds some plugins that you can actually add them to your IDE. And those IDE and the plugin offers you these dev tools. And also, if you don't have dev tools, you can, for example, if you want to run your application from command lines, Flutter offers you the dev tools in the browser. The Flutter provides you a link to go to the website of the API. There is a, for example, the IP that you can actually click on that and you will be directed to the dev tools. So you don't need to, it is not actually for the IntelliJ or something, it's for the Flutter side.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Last question, maybe it's not related to the technology side. Like this, to learn the Flutter, how's the job market?
The job market is going to be, grow. Flutter is pretty much new, but my perspective is like I'm from another country to move here, and I found a job in Canada. So it was tough for me because many big companies like Google or even Google, they don't use many big companies. They don't use the Flutter as its own stack because they have money. They can pay Android developers and the iOS developers. They don't need to use the cross-platform. But startup companies, like they are new and they want to jump so fast or grow fast, they use Flutter to program their application as much as possible and as fast as possible. So they use Flutter. So whenever they get grew or they're gonna turn to a big company, there are those kind of companies that actually use the Flutter because they don't want to migrate to Android side, because they use Flutter. So in my perspective, it's not really good at this moment, but I'm not gonna tell about the future. I don't know about the future, but it's growing so fast, as you saw the graph of the stars from the GitHub. But it has its own job opportunity. You can check on LinkedIn. it's not something that is really is out of reach or something. So you can finally find something to.
Does the freelancing applies on the same?
Yeah, freelancing is the best because whenever someone gives you a project, you're free to use anything you want. So for the freelance, is the best. You use a Flutter. It's so fast. Your development is so fast, and you can actually use a Flutter for the development.
Cool, thank you. If I make the last question. I'm used to like a web application like those one. So for the mobile, actually I'm not familiar at all. So how to hosting the mobile application? If you put it in the Google Store, the people download, or you need to host in Google Cloud or somewhere.
And for the web?
For the hosting, the mobile application.
It's whenever you build your application in web, it actually package your application in one HTML and one JS. The JS is pretty much big, but it's like 3 megabytes or something. So you need to host those 3 files or something and host in everywhere you want, like Firebase, Amazon Web Services, or anywhere, even GitHub. And someone made a package for, build your application to GitHub instantly. So it's not gonna be a really big issue. You only need to host those kind of files to wherever you want, and you have your PWA application in your, wherever you host them.
Cool, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. Just one quick question. On my side, I try Flutter for the web, just for test purpose and training. As far as I know, there is 2 options for building web application. There is one which generates you a pure HTML tree, or another one which generates you some kind of canvas.
Yeah.
What is the best option according to you in terms of performance?
Yeah, we already talked about this one. We have HTML, which I told you, it doesn't have the canvas kit and WebGL. So whenever you want to have the graphical, showing so many images or anything, use the graphic. So the performance is much better to use the WebGL part. It's pretty much heavy because the JS output is big. So it takes so much time for your user to, for the first time, only for the first time, and then it will be cached on your browser. So for the first time, it takes a little bit time to, download your JS part. But the HTML is pretty much smaller than the second one, WebGL. So whenever you don't have a graphical or anything, or have a static website or something, use the HTML. It's really good. And it doesn't really make any difference. So the HTML side is better, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia.
Yeah. Hi, yes, just had 2 questions. So you mentioned various state management techniques in Flutter, and I just wanted to ask your opinion. Which do you prefer to use?
This is kind of really, it takes a lot of time. We need another presentation for the state management. Yeah, but in my opinion, first of all, you need to know your requirements of your application. Each package has its own architecture and its own advantage rather than the others. So it really depends on your situation and your application. So if we have a next presentation, it's a really good idea to have the state management because it's a trend for the Flutter development. So we have to like cover each advantage and advantages rather the others. So it's up to you to use which one is preferred for your application.
Yes, it depends.
Yeah.
And I just have one quick question after. With Flutter and React Native, with cross-platform frameworks, there's a bit of a disadvantage when trying to use native functionality. So like your camera or Bluetooth when compared to actual native applications. If you were trying to develop an app that did use these functionalities as their main feature, would you recommend still using Flutter in a production scenario, or would you still think native?
This is a very good question. It's really, also depends. First of all, you don't need to use camera every time. It's like, for example, if you have for example, Instagram or something, how many times your user go to your camera and take a picture? It's like 2 seconds or something, or something else. But it's not really much difference performance. The only performance issue is like communication between the Dart and the Android platform side. So this is really a burden for the Dart side. So Flutter has its own FFI, I mentioned earlier, FFI platform channel. The packages didn't convert, they migrated to FFI recently, but it's pretty much new. But this is much better performance than platform channel. But again, this is not kind of native. You don't, native is the best performance. You can't really, race with native one. But it's not a really big deal to use that because Flutter has its own advantage and it's not going to race native.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your listening. Jhin is going to present the next presentation about the history of Flutter.
Hello. My name is Jhin. Probably you guys all know my name now because you did registration. So it's my first time doing the public speaking, so bear with me. So if I make mistake, don't worry. So what I want to say today is I just want to give you some kind of brief of the evolution of the Flutter. So a little bit of history, not too much detail, but the really brief. So this is me. So I work here at Unity, and then mostly I'm using Golang, JavaScript, TypeScript, React.js, GCP. So you can compare with the React DD side. And then I'm also using Flutter for my second job, kind of. So I'm doing kind of startup called Concept Beyond. This one is where I use Flutter. So I use Flutter and then Firebase together. So that's about me. And I want to go a little change log, so history of Flutter. So first one, Flutter introduced at the 2018 November, Flutter 1 release. Of course, before there was like beta or preview and so on. But here it became like kind of, you can use it to create the mobile application, Android and iOS app. So Flutter 2 released in 2021 in March. So web support became stable, and then desktop support became preview, and then null safety is introduced. I think Ali already introduced about the null safety. So this one was a really good feature that really avoiding the crash of the application. I think Android has same issue with Java, so they introduced Kotlin to tackle this. So Flutter was actually same thing. What really cool here was that because of Flutter, Dart is improved so that they have to introduce the null safety. So February 2022, Flutter 10 is released, and then they now support Windows as stable. So everyone can use the Flutter to create Windows application. And May 2022, Flutter 3 is released, And then they call Linux support unstable, meaning that you can create Ubuntu application with Flutter. And then macOS support is stable, meaning that all desktop application became stable. And then they introduced Montreal 3. Before that, it was Montreal 2, so it was a little bit old. And then they introduced, they didn't implement everything of Flutter, Montreal 3, but they started to introduce the Flutter, Montreal 3, the design system. So what we have right now is the Flutter version is 3.7.7. The Dart is 2.19.4. And now it's a fully cross-platform, so you can create web application. Probably not the website. You can still create website, but there's kind of disadvantage of the Flutter because some SEO or some kind of loading performance might be low in the Flutter, but still it's really great to create the web application, meaning that you can give the native experience in the browser. And mobile for iOS, Android from the beginning, of course there is. And then desktop, so Linux, Windows, macOS, all fully supported. And null safety, of course. And then Montreal 3 theme. With the Flutter 3.7, actually they introduced full support of the Montreal 3. So I think like 99% of the component of the Montreal 3, now you can use it in Flutter. So this is small statistics. So 700,000 applications, more than that, are published in the Play Store and Apple Store. So you can see that the number. So actually the Flutter is quite popular now. So I don't know if you guys already followed, but there was an event called Flutter Forward in January. So they introduced a lot of different things. So first thing was Impeller rendering engine. Ali already introduced about Skia. So that was the rendering engine for Flutter so that you can draw something on the screen, right? So they introduced Impeller rendering engine as the next generation. So this is supposed to improve the performance a lot better. So there was like the side-by-side demo, but this one's supposed to give you like, on the left side, you have the fixed frame rate with Skia. On the right side, you have the 60 frame rate, the FPS. So, and that's even stable, so it doesn't really shake it. So yeah, that was really nice. And then they started to support the 3D graphics. So you can use the 3D model directly into the Flutter. I think the demo is not available yet, but I saw the demo in the video, and then they just put the 3D rendering file with one line of Flutter and the Dart code, and then it was rendering and then animating, and then you can put the configuration and so on. It was really cool, actually. And this one is now already available on iOS as preview. And this one, so it's a little bit tricky, you can test it out, but you can already test it on iOS, and Android version is gonna come very soon. And this one is really interesting that I saw in the Flutter Forward event called the seamless integration, the ACA, like the interoperability. So the problem with the Flutter is that if you want to support library, you have to write every different platform. You have to write Android, you have to write for iOS, you have to write for the desktop, or differently. So that's a burden that when you make the popular library for Flutter. So they are putting a lot of effort to make it easier. So first one is, I don't know, actually I can show you the demo. Yeah, this one is a demo they introduced for the web improvement on the interoperability. So here on the right, you see there's a Flutter app running in the browser. And then here, everything written in JavaScript. So you see, increment is run together. So meaning that JavaScript and Flutter app is communicating together. Of course, I can increase from the Flutter. And then I can do like, give some effect. I don't know if you see that there from here. Yeah, and then I can spin it, see? And then, you see this? And then everything is running actually, you know, you see, the demo is running. Thank you. And then the other one is the improvement on the mobile side. So they introduced Jhin and GDG. So Jhin is supposed to be making the interface between the Objective-C, C, and Swift API. So what he does is actually CLI tools. So actually once you run it, then he automatically create the interface. So you're gonna just write C code and then Dart code, then that's it. And the GDG is same thing, but for the Java and Kotlin. And the other big announcement was Dart 3. So this one is already alpha. So they introduced records and the pattern syntax. And then they also introduced capability control to the class. So now you can put interface, base, final, sealed stuff in the class. And then they also introduced about WASM support and then RISC-V support. So I think I don't go too much detail on that, but as far as I know, the Flutter team and the Chrome team is working really close to bring the WASM in the Flutter. Yeah, so next slide, from here is I just want to, I just did too much brief, so I just wanted to introduce some syntax change in the Dart so that you can see some code. So now this is the pattern syntax. So I don't know if you can understand already. So this one used to do, you can do it with a Python, something like that. It wasn't available in Dart. Now you can do it. So you can swap the A and B just with that syntax. The other one is you can now return the multiple values, meaning that something like the tuple, right? So I don't know, maybe you can already read the syntax, right? The first name and last name, you can return in the parentheses. And then when you get it, you see it, the final first name, last name, you can get the two value, and then you can use it. The other one is the destructuring. So personally, I really like destructuring feature in JavaScript. This also is not available in many languages. So now it's coming to the Dart. So you see there in the get user, the user instance is created, and then I'm returning the user instance. And then when you get it, final user, first name, first, last name, last. I don't know if you guys all understand that, but meaning that I am defining the first variable there, and then I'm assigning first name into the first, and the last name into the last. And then you can just use it. So another use case of this destructuring. So this one is the same syntax, but I used in the for loop. So same thing, in the for loop, I'm destructuring the instance of the user in the list. So every iteration, I'm putting the first name into the first, last name into the last, and then I just print them out. So yeah, that's all actually what I prepared today. And once I did share the slide, maybe you can do, there's a demo link over there, you could try. And then since I didn't use too much time, maybe I can give you a small video play, side-by-side demo of the performance difference between Skia and the, so you don't have the premium.
My mother, that's in my browser.
I don't know if you can see here. So on the left is the Skia.
So let's.
Yeah, here on the left is the Skia. On the right is the Impeller rendering engine we introduced. So here you can see that just doing that, it only gives like 7 to 10 frame rate in average. And they just changed to the Impeller, and this one is giving you like 60 frame rate. So they are putting a lot of effort to improving the performance of the rendering. And yeah, this demo is made on the iOS, so I think the open source must be available actually if you want to test it out. Yeah, actually that's about it, what I prepared. So anyone have any question?
that actually have the Flutter in Unity or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. As far as I know, there's like Unity plugin, so maybe you can try out. But I personally didn't try it. And then, like you see there, my introduction, I'm full stack developer, not Unity developer, even though I'm working here. Anyone else? Yeah, so we have, we didn't plan yet for the Flutter event, but I know there's some kind of event from the GDG Montreal. It's coming. So you see there's like Woman in Tech, the Meetup is coming. And then Kotlin conference is also, we are preparing. So just for your reference, and then maybe we can see the next Meetup. And yeah, so I guess you guys see how I speak. So anyone can speak, and then even your first time, don't worry, we can try, and then we can be together. So just let us know if anyone want to do some speak. And yeah, if anyone have any suggestion about our community, how we want to grow, it's not only me and Ali, so we're together, right? So we made together. So if you guys have any suggestion, you can feel free to come to the Slack channel and then talk about it. And yeah, if anyone talk about it right now, it's fine.
Yeah, I just want to mention we are to organize this event, and we need to if you're really interested in Flutter. I don't know how many of you haven't used the Flutter. Is it your actually first time seeing some kind of cool stuff about Flutter? Is there anyone? Haven't used Flutter? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So hello. I just started to learn Flutter, and yeah, I like to join this community. And my suggestion is can we organize hands-on work seminar or any workspace we can start from scratch beginner how we create the simple basic calculator application or what kind of code structure and project structure we need to. So it will be better for the beginning, I think.
Some kind of hands-on.
Yeah, so that's kind of suggestion from my side. Yeah, it's we have a 2 or 3 hour session as today.
Yeah, sure.
So we can organize that.
Yeah, of course.
And I love to join this community. Yeah, sure.
Cool. Yeah. This is going to be our next, achievement or something. But we have this, we can have this, but we need people to gather everyone in one place or something. So first of all, please join our Slack channel, GDG Montreal in channel Flutter. And then if you are desire to have separate, Discord channel or something, I really prefer to have Discord server.
Yeah.
Because Discord is better place to communicate with people and everyone, and just it's really easy. And yeah, if you are really interested, and we have to see how many people want to contribute to our community. We can't really do everything together. So that's the reason we need to know many people, find the people who works actually in Flutter. And it's really good to also mention your company is already use the Flutter in their production. And we need to know, for example, it's good for the hiring process and everything. You can also hire people, and if each one of you want to hire Flutter developers, this is the best place to hire Flutter developers. So, and we can, after that, in the next future, the goal for us is to know the people who's really expert in Flutter or something, and we can actually connect them with the hiring people or HR people to work in their company. This is kind of our past, our roadmap. So everyone is free to join us, like to contribute. Another idea is like to have GitHub repository also, because as I mentioned, like there are many packages. We can like create our own packages, and we can use our organization or everything. And people are making money right now from packages. Some organization and the company invest in your packages because they need your packages to like be maintained every week or every month. And also Flutter this is issue I made, and I'm really proud of that. I made an issue for in our project, we had many duplicated packages. The owner were gone, and we didn't know what to do. And I made this issue in Dart's repository that we need to have a sponsorship link in the Dart's pub dev, and and they made this feature, and they added this feature to the pub website. So many organizations now are able to donate or spend some money because their products are, dependent on their packages. So we can also have our own organization create our packages and make money for that.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. That was great. I do work with Flutter professionally. What I would like to see, perhaps as a suggestion, is perhaps an environment where we can just kind of co-work or see what others are working on and just discuss. Sit down and have a chat and share, just like in a more maybe an open forum where we can meet other developers and talk about what they're doing, what companies they're working on for, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, perfect. That's a really good idea. We can have more interactive, meetings. This is our first event, so we didn't want to do that. Actually, we didn't expect 30 people coming, but I think more than 30 people joined our event. So it's really awesome that you already, trusted us to come to the first event. So we can have more interactive way of meetups everywhere we can go, like in a coffee shop or something. So and it's a really good idea to have those kind of meetups also. That's a really good point. Thank you.
Yeah, we have Slack groups actually you guys can join, and then there's a Flutter channel, so we can talk about it. So maybe this is what you are looking for, so we need to talk and share all the information over there.
Yeah, we also share the presentation in the Slack. And then if we want to have our own separate Discord channel to interact with other ones or see other developers, we can create our Discord server.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Are you GDE?
Yeah, we are GDG organizer. Oh, GDE. No, we're not GDE, but maybe later.
But have time. If our community grow, maybe we can invite GDEs so that we can have some more the expert talk, right?
Yeah. We can have, because it's we can have the Flutter team are really good people. You can go to Flutter Discord and just have a chat with the Flutter team. They are really cool, awesome people. They are really friendly, and you can actually ask them any kind of question, and they will reply you. It's not something you can, and they can also have, a presentation in Montreal. Thank you, everyone. This is the end of the presentation. And how much time do we have? Until 8?
The place is booked up to 9, so we have plenty of time to socialize.
Use the space to interact with each other and know about the kind of companies use Flutter and everything. So thank you for coming and attending to our first event. Hopefully we have our next event I'm certainly want to have our next event in next month, so come join us on next event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.